So any demand for Bitcoin can now be satiated without any problem whatsoever. And that is really big. That's why actually I thought 2024 was going to be the year we hit 1 million, because I don't think people fully understand how big that is. Central banks can buy ETFs. There is no barrier for fiat money entering Bitcoin. But I think this year we'll hit it since we missed last year. But you have MicroStrategy, you have ETFs, you have the removal of the barrier, you have nation states, and what else? There's just so much going on, like real adoption of Bitcoin. So I just can't see it not hitting 1 million this year. And the other thing is, you see a lot of people predicting prices, right? They like to be cautious and realistic and say, yeah, it can get to 150. It can get to 200. It can get to 250. Because I think they want to sound reasonable. Nobody wants to be the crazy guy saying it's going to 10x, like me.
Samson Moe starts out by talking about the recent price movement of Bitcoin and the elements influencing market mood. He asserts that in addition to being anticipated, short-term corrections are an essential component of Bitcoin's long-term trajectory. He emphasizes how Bitcoin's base is being strengthened by institutional demand and increased knowledge of its function as a hedge against fiat devaluation. Moe also highlights the importance of Bitcoin supply dynamics, citing elements including growing nation-state acceptance and the effects of impending halving events. He contends that Bitcoin is the safest asset in the digital realm because its foundations are stronger than ever, even though the larger cryptocurrency market is still speculative. He explains that the dominance of Bitcoin is an important sign of market capital rotation. Capital always returns to Bitcoin when speculative altcoin cycles come and go, solidifying its status as the safest and most reliable store of value. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications before we delve further. Thank you and enjoy the video.
Bitcoin is massively undervalued. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been predicting 1 million for a while, and hopefully I'll hit sometime, but I believe this pullback is very normal because the altcoin market was overheated. If you look at XRP, Ripple, it was $3. That's ridiculous. With Bitcoin at 97 or so, Ripple is still at 260. And then you have Solana and everything. Everything is overpriced right now for the altcoins. So I think it's normal. We come down, they shake off, and then we go back up. Bitcoin dominance increases again. But Bitcoin dominance is really intellect measurement, like how much money is being allocated to altcoins. And that needs to drop before we can take off again, I believe. But overall, Bitcoin is undervalued. And I think even at 100K, 150, 200, it's still undervalued.
And what's the case for it being undervalued?
Well, there's just so much demand for Bitcoin right now from MicroStrategy, from the ETFs, from nation states, from ordinary people buying and hodling, that I don't think people have fully realized that most of the year's supply of mined Bitcoin is already gone a few times over. So you have to understand there is ultimate scarcity in Bitcoin. And I believe the understanding of ultimate scarcity is very far away still. People just can't wrap their heads around there only being 21 million. And when the price drops, people kind of feel confident that I can get it later. But then Bitcoin rips and then there is no later. Like imagine being able to buy Bitcoin at $10,000 a coin. Again, it's not possible. And this milestone of 100,000 will be gone again in time. So there's two things I would say. One is there are obviously OGs or old hodlers that are going to sell something and, buy a house, maybe enjoy life a bit. So there will always be some coins that are sold outside of the mined supply. But there's also roughly 2 million coins that sit on exchange for market making, trading, and arbitrage. And those 2 million coins, it's dropping obviously. Now it was at more than 2 million before, but now it's at around 2 million. But that is enough for the coins to drop the market. And a lot of it has to do with Bitcoin being a 24/7 market as well. So this drop, I believe, is related to the tariff war. American, Canadian, Mexican, we're all going to tariff each other. And it's just panic. So Bitcoin being the only 24/7 liquid market is the only thing that can react immediately. So it's sort of like the market sentiment is taken out on Bitcoin. We're the first to move, the most volatile, and the biggest move, and then the equities markets and everything else follows after that when the markets open. Such an antiquated concept, right? But that's what it is. But going back to the point, those 2 million coins is enough to move the market a little bit. And the impact of those 2 million coins, I believe, is becoming less and less pronounced as we increase hodlers. So if you break down the schema of who impacts Bitcoin price, you have the hodlers. Zero impact. They're just sitting on the coins. And in ways you can look at it, they're coiling up that spring. Then you have the buyers, the people that are DCAing either like by day or by month, or you can say MicroStrategy is also in the DCA category, and hodling, but they're actively in acquisition mode and Metaplanet, and like you said. Then you have the traders, which is kind of that 2 million coins. So that is kind of what is driving the market. And Bitcoin will always be volatile because you have that slush fund of coins on exchanges. But that is going to be drained over time. And we do see that. And it makes it more pronounced, the coil up effect from the DCAers and the hodlers. That's the path to 1 million.
$1 million Bitcoin, Samson. When's that going to happen?
My guess is it's going to be this year.
It's going to be this year.
You look at all the factors that we're facing. You have
That's a 10x.
Bitcoin has 17x in the past. There is no upper bound to Bitcoin. So there are people that talk about diminishing returns, right? But if it's a step change, just like the failure of the German mark, it's not a gradual thing and there's no upper bound. It's just gone. And you use a new thing now, right? It's like, yeah, we don't use horses for transportation anymore. You know, we came here on a car or on airplanes and whatnot. So we use the new thing. And Bitcoin is that new thing because it's 100, if not 1,000 times better than anything else we've used as money in human history. But back to the point, what do we have? We have MicroStrategy buying nonstop. We have ETFs, which are a doorway to legacy fiat money. If you go back to all the previous bull runs, where we get bogged down is the exchanges, because that's the touch point, right? That's how you convert fiat into Bitcoin.
According to Samson Moe, the entire financial environment will drastically change once Bitcoin reaches specific price benchmarks. At $500,000, Bitcoin might overtake gold as a store of value, accounting for over half of the market capitalization of gold. This change may lead central banks to convert their reserves to Bitcoin. Some even speculate that the US may sell its gold holdings to purchase Bitcoin, which would hasten the transfer even more. El Salvador's changing approach to Bitcoin is a major topic of Moe's talk. Others believe the government has caved in to pressure from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, but Moe sees things differently. Although El Salvador has modified its Bitcoin legislation to conform to IMF regulations, Samson sees this as a calculated step that indicates a more well-rounded strategy to incorporating Bitcoin into its economy. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest videos. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Now let's dive back into the interview.
But you have MicroStrategy, you have ETFs, you have the removal of the barrier, you have nation states, and what else? There's just so much going on, like real adoption of Bitcoin. So I just can't see it not hitting 1 million this year. And the other thing is, you see a lot of people predicting prices, right? They like to be cautious and realistic and say, yeah, it can get to 150. It can get to 200. It can get to 250. Because I think they want to sound reasonable. Nobody wants to be the crazy guy saying it's going to 10x, like me. They want to be, I'm a serious person with realistic projections, but Bitcoin is not a realistic thing. It's a zero-sum game. Either you're gonna use Bitcoin or you're gonna starve. So it's all or none. And when you get to different levels, like when you get to 100K, when you get to 100K, it's different, right? When you get to 200K, the world again looks very, very different. Just close your eyes and imagine, what does the world look like when Bitcoin is at 500K? That's, you're reaching half of gold's market cap at that point, you know? That will demonetize gold if it doesn't get demonetized earlier, because there's talk of, the US selling gold to buy Bitcoin to fund their reserves, because that would take out their enemies who have been accumulating gold for the last decade, right? But disregard that. Bitcoin is sitting at 500K. We are the second largest asset now, behind gold. It's a very different landscape. And at that point, do you think most people would still want to sell their Bitcoin to get fiat? Or would most people now insist on being paid in Bitcoin? I think it's the latter. So from there, you just 2x.
Yeah.
And then you're number one. And if you remember back in the old bull runs, it was like Kraken's backlog for KYCing people was 3 months long. Coinbase, same thing. That's the bottleneck, because to comply as an exchange, you have to KYC everyone, and you don't keep 1,000-person KYC team, right? You have to keep a team that you can feed, and you can't scale it up that quickly. So that's kind of where it tapers off. But with the ETFs, there is no bottleneck anymore. Central banks can buy ETFs. So any demand for Bitcoin can now be satiated without any problem whatsoever. And that is really big. That's why actually I thought 2024 was going to be the year we hit 1 million, because I don't think people fully understand how big that is. Central banks can buy ETFs. There is no barrier for fiat money entering Bitcoin. But I think this year we'll hit it since we missed last year. So it's confusing. And I would say the breakdown is this. It's a glass of water. It's kind of at the halfway mark. You can look at it as half full or half empty. So the Bitcoin law has been softened, or you can say neutered a bit. They've amended it to comply with the IMF agreement, almost to the letter. So everything they said in the IMF agreement, they've amended it. But I think the key thing is the amendments leave the door kind of open. It's ambiguous. So there is still a Bitcoin law, but Bitcoin is no longer a currency. And it is legal tender, but it is now voluntary. So what does that mean exactly? It means Bitcoin is legal tender. There's no capital gains tax still.
Okay.
There's another line in there that says you can use Bitcoin. The government can't now. So there is this Bitcoin law. Bitcoin is legal tender. But what is a legal tender without enforcement? Not that there was before. It always has been voluntary. So you can look at it both ways. Like, some people are reacting very strongly and saying, they capitulated, they bent the knee to the IMF and, because they sold us out, and they're very disillusioned. And then you have the promoters of El Salvador and Bukele, and they're saying, yeah, we won. We're going to take the money and buy Bitcoin with IMF money. But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Samson Mow offers a bold and optimistic prediction for the future of Bitcoin. He highlights the emergence of Bitcoin ETFs, the expanding participation of nation-states, and the expanding use of Bitcoin by major organizations, such as MicroStrategy. Despite more cautious estimates from others, Samson thinks that with all these events, Bitcoin is on track to hit $1 million this year. It's an all-or-nothing situation where you either embrace Bitcoin or risk falling behind, he contends, and its trajectory is not predicated on being realistic, but rather on its crucial role in the global economy. Bitcoin will begin to supplant gold as a reserve asset as it surpasses significant price benchmarks, like as $100,000 or $200,000 and eventually $500,000. The US may even decide to sell its gold in order to purchase Bitcoin. Samson also discusses El Salvador's Bitcoin legislation, pointing out that recent changes have maintained Bitcoin's potential while adhering to IMF commitments. Samson views this as a necessary concession for the nation's economic stability, even though some view it as a sign of surrender. Bitcoin remains legal tender in a more voluntary role. This change underlines the fact that Bitcoin's essential role is far from over and that it is still changing in the global political scene. According to Samson's observations, Bitcoin is headed toward dominating the global financial system in spite of obstacles. As Samson Mow suggests, the world is changing rapidly and Bitcoin's journey is just beginning. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for more valuable content, and as always, happy investing.